Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you're preparing for the UPSC Civil Services examination, you've probably felt that sheer sense of dread that surrounds the massive syllabus of General Studies Paper 2. It looks incredibly intimidating, doesn't it? Well, today, we're going to completely change how you look at it. We're going to demystify this giant syllabus and reframe it for you. Because honestly, this paper isn't just some boring list of topics to memorize. It is quite literally the fascinating operating system of the Indian nation.
And the stakes here? They are huge. This paper alone carries a massive 250 marks in your mains examination. But I really want you to look beyond just that number. Mastering GS Paper 2 isn't merely about clearing an exam. It's about fundamentally understanding how the country functions, who actually holds the power, and exactly how that power is balanced. Think of it this way. If you want to be a part of the system, you first have to understand the system. The official UPSC syllabus gives you 20 really complex paragraphs, but we're going to neatly fold all of that into a simple 4 pillars framework: Indian polity and constitution, social justice, governance, and international relations. Check out how those 20 syllabus units actually break down. Polity absolutely dominates. It takes up exactly half the paper with 10 units. Meanwhile, social justice takes 4, governance takes 2, and international relations rounds it out with the final 4. This gives you a really clear map of exactly where the bulk of your effort needs to go.
All right, let's dive right into Pillar 1, Indian Polity and Constitution, the foundation and rulebook.
This rulebook outlines the precise structure of our executive, legislature, and judiciary. It's essentially the blueprint of how India governs itself. But our incredible system didn't just magically pop out of thin air in January 1950. To truly grasp the Constitution, we have to trace its historical underpinnings. We're talking about going all the way back to the British East India Company's Regulating Act of 1773, tracking the evolution through the Government of India Act of 1858, right up to the modern Constitution's commencement. Understanding this evolution is absolutely crucial because it tells you exactly why our system is designed the way it is today. A really crucial concept here is understanding how the Constitution protects itself. And that brings us to the basic structure doctrine. See, even though the Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, it absolutely cannot alter its essential principles, things like India's sovereignty, its democratic nature, and secularism. It is a brilliant, impartial safeguard meant to limit legislative power and protect the very core of our constitutional values. This also perfectly sets up another major dynamic you're going to study: the division of power between the center and the states. The Constitution clearly outlines who gets to do what, dividing up legislative, administrative, and financial responsibilities. But as you can probably imagine, whenever two different governments are sharing power, constitutional friction is completely inevitable. Understanding these friction points and how they constantly challenge our federal structure is a huge part of this pillar. Which brings us to a rather provocative question. The Constitution is made, but did everyone actually get justice? Our founding fathers wrote some amazing rules. But as we all know, rules on paper don't always equal reality on the ground. This question perfectly bridges the gap between the static rules of polity and their real-world application. And that transitions us perfectly into Pillar 2, social justice, protecting the vulnerable. This entire section is dedicated to how the state apparatus steps in to uplift the most vulnerable sections of our population. We're talking about women, children, the elderly, the disabled, and minority groups. But the government simply can't do it all alone. The syllabus specifically asks you to study the development industry. This means understanding the critical role of NGOs and self-help groups. They act as a vital third pillar, right alongside the government, mobilizing people at the grassroots level, fighting for environmental protection, and ensuring that social justice actually reaches the last mile. Within social justice, your core focus areas are very specific: eradicating poverty and hunger, while building resilient health, education, and human resource sectors. If you're planning to be an administrator, you've got to realize that managing these sectors isn't just some side project, it is your core administrative duty. You need to know the statistics, the historical policies, and honestly, why some schemes wildly succeed while others totally fail. Moving right along, let's shift gears to Pillar 3, governance, the administrative engine. If polity is the rulebook and social justice is the goal, well, governance is the actual administrative engine that makes it happen. This is where you study the exact machinery that you, as future officers, are aiming to join. It focuses heavily on how administration happens on a daily basis. Central to modern governance is accountability. Take the Citizen Charter, for example. It's a public document that clearly outlines an organization's commitment to its services and its direct responsibility to the citizen. Tools like this, combined with e-governance, where citizens can just go online to apply for passports or licenses, literally force the government bureaucracy to be transparent, fast, and accountable to the public. So what specific tools of governance are you going to master? You'll dive deep into e-governance models, mechanisms for transparency, and dispute redressal bodies. But most importantly, you're going to study the role of civil services in a democracy. You'll learn exactly why civil servants are known as the steel frame of India, and what your future responsibilities will actually look like when it comes to preserving the nation's integrity. Finally, we expand our lens for Pillar 4, International Relations, India on the global stage. Here, we move entirely away from internal administration and look outward. Because in our highly interconnected world, no nation can survive in isolation. This pillar is all about understanding India's strategic position globally. Your priorities here are clearly defined. First, the immediate neighborhood, which means navigating some incredibly complex relationships with Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, and others. Second, understanding regional and global groupings like SAARC, BRICS, and the G20. Third, knowing the mandate of international organizations like the UN and the WTO. And finally, studying the impact of the massive Indian diaspora around the world and how foreign policies directly affect their interests. Okay, so we've covered the what. Now let's talk about the how. It is time for strategy, cracking the code, weightage, time, and resources. Take a really close look at this workload breakdown. Notice how polity and international relations overlap in both prelims and mains? That's huge. But social justice and governance are exclusively for the mains exam. Because of this, your time budget absolutely has to reflect reality. Aim for about 120 to 130 hours for polity, 60 to 70 hours for IR, and just 40 to 60 hours each for social justice and governance.
To hit those targets efficiently, you've got to stick to the recommended standard resources. For Indian polity, M. Lakshmikant is the gold standard, no question. But whatever you do not skip your foundations. The 11th and 12th standard NCERTs are absolute non-negotiables for building your base. If you combine these core books with a really sharp eye on daily current affairs, you'll have everything you need to conquer this syllabus.
And I want to pause and focus on this number for a second. 130. That is the absolute maximum number of hours you should spend studying polity. There is this really dangerous trap where some aspirants end up spending 300 hours dissecting just fundamental rights. Please do not do this. You are preparing for a generalist competitive exam. You're not doing a PhD in political science. Keep your preparation balanced across all the pillars. Ultimately, whenever you start to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of GS Paper 2, and you will, I want you to remember this simple truth. You aren't just studying to pass an exam. You are reading the manual to run the country. Every single hour you put into this syllabus is an hour spent becoming the empowered, focused, and capable administrator that India needs. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop just studying for a test and start preparing to run a nation? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.